Have you ever been angry at someone without knowing what they were going through? Have you ever looked at a person and decided they were careless, rude, or irresponsible, only to discover later that you were completely wrong? Today's story carries a lesson that many people learn too late. It is a story about pain, sacrifice, and a mistake that almost all of us make. So listen carefully, because by the end of this story, you may never judge someone the same way again. One rainy afternoon, a hospital received an emergency call. A young boy had been brought into the emergency room after a terrible accident. His condition was critical. Every second mattered. Doctors and nurses rushed around, trying to stabilize him. But there was one problem. The hospital needed a specialist surgeon immediately. Without that surgeon, the boy's chances of survival were very small. The hospital staff quickly called the doctor. "Doctor, please come as soon as possible. We have an emergency surgery." The doctor answered the phone right away. "I'll be there," he said. Then he hung up. Back at the hospital, the boy's father walked nervously up and down the hallway. His hands trembled. His heart pounded. His son was fighting for his life behind those doors. Every minute felt like an hour. Every second felt unbearable. The father looked at the clock again and again. "Where is the doctor?" he whispered. His fear slowly turned into frustration. Then, frustration became anger, finally. After what felt like forever, the doctor arrived. He rushed through the hospital entrance and headed straight toward the operating room. The moment the father saw him, he exploded with anger. "Why did you take so long?" he shouted. The hallway fell silent. Several nurses turned to look. The father continued, "Don't you know my son's life is in danger? How can you be so careless? Where have you been? Don't you have any sense of responsibility?" The doctor stopped. Instead of becoming angry, he calmly looked at the father. His face was tired. His eyes seemed heavy, but he still managed a gentle smile. "I am sorry," he said softly. "I wasn't in the hospital when the call came. I came as fast as I could. Now, please allow me to do my work. Your son needs me." But the father's fear had already taken control of him. "Calm down," he snapped. "How can I calm down? If your son were lying in there, fighting for his life, would you be calm? If your own child was dying while waiting for a doctor, what would you do?" The words hung in the air. For a long moment, the doctor remained silent. Then, he smiled again. Not because he was happy, not because the words didn't hurt, but because he understood something the father didn't. "We will do everything we can," the doctor replied quietly. "By God's grace, your son will be all right. Please, pray for him." The father turned away in frustration. "It's easy to give advice when it's not your child," he muttered. The doctor heard every word, yet he said nothing. Without another comment, he walked into the operating room. The doors closed behind him, and the surgery began. The father sat alone in the waiting area. Minutes passed, then an hour, then another. The waiting felt endless. Every time a nurse walked by, he stood up. Every time a door opened, his heart skipped a beat. His mind filled with fear. What if his son didn't survive? What if this was the last day he would ever see him? What if he never heard his son's voice again? The father buried his face in his hands. For the first time that day, he began to pray. Not for money, not for success, not for anything else, just for his son. "Please, save my boy," he whispered. Inside the operating room, the doctor worked tirelessly, hour after hour, without rest, without complaint. The surgery was difficult, One mistake could cost a life, but he remained focused. Every movement mattered, every decision mattered, because a child depended on him. Finally, after several exhausting hours, the operating room doors opened. The doctor stepped out. His face was covered in sweat. His shoulders looked tired. But this time, there was a smile on his face. The father jumped to his feet. The doctor looked at him and said the words every parent longs to hear. "Thank God, your son is safe." The father's eyes filled with tears. Relief washed over him. His legs almost gave way. His son was alive. The doctor had saved him. Before the father could ask another question, the doctor began walking away quickly. "If you have any questions, please ask the nurse," he said while moving down the hallway. Then he disappeared around the corner. The father stared after him. His relief quickly turned into annoyance. "Unbelievable," he said. "How arrogant can someone be? He couldn't even stay for a few minutes. My son just survived surgery, and he doesn't even care enough to explain what happened." A nurse nearby heard his words. She stopped walking. Slowly, she turned toward him. The father noticed tears forming in her eyes. At first, he didn't understand. Then, the nurse spoke. Her voice was shaking. "Sir, please, don't judge him." The father frowned. "What do you mean?" The nurse wiped away a tear. Then, she said something that changed everything. "The doctor's son died yesterday." The father froze. For a moment, he thought he had heard wrong. "What?" The nurse nodded. "Yesterday evening, his son was killed in a road accident." The father's face went pale. The nurse continued. "He was at his son's funeral when we called him." The hallway suddenly felt silent. The father's heart sank. "He left his own child's burial?" "Yes," the nurse replied softly. "The moment he heard that another child needed emergency surgery, he left his son's funeral and came here." The father's eyes widened. The nurse struggled to hold back her tears. "He spent hours saving your son's life, while his own son was being buried." The father felt as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. Every harsh word he had spoken echoed in his mind. Every accusation, every insult, every angry assumption. He remembered shouting at the doctor. He remembered questioning his responsibility. He remembered saying, "If your son were in there, would you be calm?" Those words now felt like knives, because the truth was far worse than he could have imagined. The doctor's son wasn't in a hospital room. His son was gone forever. And despite carrying unimaginable pain, the doctor had still chosen to save someone else's child. Tears filled the father's eyes. He looked down the hallway where the doctor had disappeared. For the first time, he understood. The doctor wasn't arrogant. He wasn't careless. He wasn't irresponsible. He was a grieving father, carrying a burden too heavy for most people to bear. Yet, he still showed up. He still did his duty. He still saved a life. The father covered his face and cried, not because his son had survived, but because he had judged a man whose story he never knew. We meet people every day. Some smile while hiding pain. Some continue working while carrying heartbreak. Some appear calm while fighting battles nobody can see. The truth is simple. You never truly know what someone is going through. The person you criticize may be carrying a burden far heavier than your own. The person you judge may be fighting a battle you know nothing about. And the person you misunderstand may be making sacrifices you could never imagine. Before you judge someone, pause. Before you get angry, think. Before you assume, remember this story, because everyone has a story. And sometimes, the strongest people are the ones suffering silently. The doctor lost his own son, yet he chose to save another father's child. That is the kind of humanity the world needs more of, and that is why we should always choose understanding over judgment, because what you see is only a small part of someone's life. The rest is a story you may never know. Moral of the story: never judge anyone before knowing their situation. Every person is fighting a battle you cannot see. A little patience, kindness, and understanding can change the way you see the world and the way the world sees you.